Hello, good morning, and apologies for the technical glitch, but here we are finally ready to talk about open source workflows. Meetup for PyLadies Kampala. So I intend to use a different approach for this presentation, and so feel free to let me know if you have any questions. So we can start maybe by defining what is open source workflows. So workflow, the English word, is basically a repeatable pattern of activity enabled by systematic organization over time. And there are several ways of doing. I don't know if there are several ways of doing, so several ways of making it successful. And today we'll have theoretical steps on how you want to work on a project. So open source, think of it like a job, just that maybe you choose not to be paid for, though you might have other compensation. Okay, we have a problem with chat. Okay, I think Eva will help me to enable the chats so that we can engage. Yeah, so as I was saying, so you are looking at open source as a project, sort of an employment. So it's a contract, it's something that you're going to commit. So you need a lot of discipline to achieve it. So the first step to create a successful workflow will be analysis, where you plan on your needs. So you need to know first, what are your skill sets? What can you offer? And you need to know what time do you have, period that you can do your contribution, and how best can it help you to also achieve some of your goals. So in the analysis period, this is where you can use tools like maybe SWOT matrix. So the strength, weakness, opportunities, analysis to see what is the best way that you think you can contribute your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what you think this particular project can help you on. Is it the best time for you? Do you have time to contribute? And also what time works for you, so that, because you want consistency, nobody wants anyone contributing on the open source project if they can't commit. So then the next step will be, after you have analyzed, you have a plan, it will be to pick a project. So there is a ton of projects out there in different languages and different topics and different thematics, concerns it addresses, different problems it solves. So how do you pick a project? So basically it will be based on your initial analysis of the needs. So if you have already figured out your strength and you know some of your weaknesses, then it will be easy for you to decide. Some people pick projects to improve their skill sets. Some pick because they feel they are strong in that particular field, or they have quite enough competence that they can share with other people to improve the project. So after you identify all this and you have now a project that you pick to choose, so this is where now you go to the nitty-gritties of the project. So in understanding your roadmap now of the particular project that you have selected, so it can be, if it doesn't matter if your opportunity was even to maybe improve on your skill set or to just contribute on the project, you still need to understand what the project is about. So you need the details, the roadmap. And this is where Most of these open source projects, they are well structured and they have people to help you with onboarding. Some of them, it doesn't have such a lot of people actively working on daily. So it might take a lot of initiative for you as a person to get on board. So in understanding the roadmap, you need to ask a lot of questions. You need to take a lot of initiative to reach to some of the core contributors. You need to read a lot of documentation for that particular project. So in understanding the roadmap, this is where you want to understand the architecture, the principles behind the project. So it might be built maybe on a particular framework that you are well versed in and you have worked with it before. But this particular project, they have a different approach on how they have set up on how they have approached on using that framework to achieve the task. So it might not be exact same way. So some people follow some fundamentals of design, maybe architecting. So here where now you get to also understand the specifics of this project. What is different? What makes it? Where are the different wire? How is the wiring? What connects to what? Where is what? Um, which involves now in understanding. So you go through documentation, you need to set up the toolings, you need to start thinking about the toolings, what you need. And it brings us to the next step of now setting up the project. So after you have understood, how the project runs, it will be easy for you now to set up. And in setup is where you're going to think about the different toolings that you need. So here, if you need a particular code editor, if you need an IDE, so I have a strong preference on IDE over editors because IDEs gives you more options. It helps you in debugging just over the box. Out of the box, like you can easily integrate debugging tools and be able to, in case of hurdles, be able to solve some of the problems encountered. So here, while you're setting up the project for build, you identify the niche. So if on identifying your opportunities or your weakness during the project analysis or analyzing which project you really want to contribute on, so you already will be knowing your niche. So you can have specific targets on what you want to do in that particular project. So if your interest is in the front end, if your interest is maybe in integrating maybe speeding it up, optimization. So you might want to maybe focus on messaging tools in the app, or if it's optimization, maybe introduce some of caching tools or improve some of their queries. So you already know your niche. So while you're setting up the project, you know where to focus. The good way will be to understand the entire project so that you can help improve it. And usually you do this incrementally. You cannot just join a new project and hope or expect that from the day one you're going to be a master of everything from all the way from, if it's not just an API, all the way from front end to how the middlewares, how the messaging, everything. So you need to do this incrementally. So how I suggest this for beginners is uh, just by onboarding, you will be directed on what are some of the simple tasks. Of course, this is biased sometimes because based on perception of who is onboarding you, their definition of easy might not be the same as yours, but they usually give you very, very good pointers. So from there, you can start by things If, for example, you didn't enjoy the onboarding process, you can start by improving some of their processes. So these are different ways now to contribute on the projects. So you can maybe contribute in the onboarding document. You can maybe on their onboarding documents some of the suggestions or recommendations. That's also contributing to the project. You can maybe improve their documentation, because part of your onboarding for you to understand, so the previous step of understanding their roadmaps and reading their documentations, you might find maybe their documentation is lacking some way. So this is the opportunity for you to help improve it. So what you feel is lacking, how do you think it will be best for the next person who comes to contribute? You can improve with basic things like maybe introduce some style guide. You can learn more how is their style applied, and usually in every code base there is always technical debts, and some of this might be in simple things such as just styling. You can touch on those basic things and help on styling some of the code, and maybe standardize, because open source means it has a lot of content. You get opportunity to improve on some of the style guides. Then you can incrementally move. If it's if it's a full stack project, it has both front end and back end. You get opportunity here to maybe start with just small front end tasks. You can suggest maybe better fonts, add some spacing on make some of the text legible. Just these basic stats incrementally as you understand the project more. So once you change something, then you know how that. So you get opportunity to see if you're using tools, IDE tools. So it has all this preview for you to see to-dos in a code. So sometimes we don't have enough time to finish a particular tool or to do it properly, but you have ideas on how it can be made better. So you leave behind some comments with to-dos. So this is your opportunity now. You can review some of these to-dos. Maybe they were cumbersome, and the developer or the contributor didn't have much time to do it. So it's a very good opportunity for you now to take such tasks. Editors, it has huge support for some of the extensions and also some of the debug tools, which can be very, very helpful to make your work easier. So from languages like, if you're a Python person, there's IDEs like PyCharm. A question of how do I manage myself? How do I manage my tasks? How do I be more this contribution? So this is where you start, you set up some basic tools maybe to help you with your task management. You can use open source available tools, which are free. I will go for contribute best, and based on your time and availability, and also skill set, and allocate yourself time. You can even put reminders on your calendar, and then just take on those tasks and see, and basically put on your task manager. So for easy reminding and tracking, so you can track your improvements on these different tasks. In project build, on how maybe to break down some of these bulk, chunky, effective, but there are scenarios that have not been factored, and this is where now following approaches of test-driven development comes into play. They are really, really helpful to also help you get used questions in solving problems. So approaches like TDD, so where everyone has their different styles. Some people would rather write tests than write the feature. Some people rather write the feature than write the test. But at the end of the day, you have to analyze all these different scenarios and then make sure they are well catered for. So you highlight all of them in your test. So there's this great behavior development tool. It's called Gherkin language. So it's used in many languages actually. I saw there's one for Ruby. It's called Cucumber, and there's one for PHP. It's called Behat. So it's a full test. There's a full test suite, but it has a BDD approach. And why BDD? Why BDD? Because it gives you that customer perspective when you're designing your problems. So you get to think of it as a user coming back, how a feature is expected to behave, how it should interact with you. And that can help you in terms of so it's very, very crucial to do tests. And if the test coverage, most of the open source project, it's one of the checks to maybe review some of the tests and try to expand them. After you've written your feature, you have built, you have debugged, you have written tests, it comes the step of now PR. So where you do a pull request and then the review cycle begins. You might receive a lot of comments. Nice, might be positive, and that's the thing with also open source is it's very diverse because you have people from different backgrounds. It's an open tool, so some people might think certain approaches is okay for them, but might not be okay for you. So you might find some of the comments maybe intrusive, some very defensive, some very maybe offensive to you. So here is where you don't take it personally, that is wrong. So it's not, don't look at it more like an argumentative opportunity. Look at it like opportunity to improve and grow. So where you take everything, forget what you know, only defend if you really, really, really know that this is wrong and your way is right. But you can also defend it in a way that is educative to the other person who is doing your review. So, but generally the rule of thumb is let's all be gracious in our reviews. And after your PR is addressed, it's deployed, and most of the time, this deployment, some of the tools might be packages, some might be extensions, some might be core to languages. So it has a path, a development path. So they have particular release cycle, and not unless it's very, very critical bug. So after your PR is merged, it can just maybe be added on the list of to be released, and then you wait for the good time for deployment. And whenever it's deployed, it's always a good idea to celebrate your wins. You know, you helped improve something or contributed something, no matter how small, even if it was just underlining a particular text in the front end bit. Be proud of your work because share, beauty, can learn, and also start contributing. I think that would be my that would be my presentation. It was very, very, very simple and short, as said, promised. So I'll be looking forward to your questions. Let me access the chat room now. Okay. So people feel free to, okay. Eva has something to add. Eva, do you have anything to add? Guys, feel free to ask questions. So that was my presentation for the workflows. Okay. The bullet point for this plan, I'll do a recap. So the first point will be analyze. Analyze what do you need? What can you offer? What time do you have? In this analysis, it should be very helpful throughout the entire project. Then in analysis, it will help you to now select a project that you want to contribute to. So this will be after you identified your needs. Then you have your needs now. The next thing will be in the project to understand the roadmap. So you ask questions to the co-contributors, ask questions, read the documentations, understand basically what they're trying to achieve, so that you can be most helpful to them. Then next, it will be now to set up the project for build. This will be locally. So you pick your niche in the project. So how do you best improve the entire project is by doing it incrementally. So you can start with small stuffs. Things like if the onboarding process was not as smooth as you expected, you can maybe try to suggest some ways to improve it. You can maybe contribute in the documentation. So you can add missing stuff in the documentation. You can contribute in their styling. You can help on some of the issues that are missing in their style guides. Then you can start on small tasks incrementally. Basic stuff like maybe front-end tasks, those things like padding. How can I, move this to the next, other space between this and the other particular component? How can I move this to the next line so that it will neater? Maybe help change, add some few graphics, make it more best. And then you can address some of the to-do. Usually in a complex code base, there's usually some to-dos, technical debts. So if you're in a position to address some of these, because some are easily added because there's no time to address them, but they're not very critical. So this is where maybe you can start. It will help you to get hang of the entire project. So in the project development, there are very specific approaches which would be helpful to you as a person and the project. So things like test-driven approach and functional unit integration tests. And I suggest that also behavioral development approach in the testing, because it gives you also clarity in these tasks that you are addressing. It helps you to manage the expectations better because you have a perspective of the user on how to interact with a particular feature that you're doing. And then after you're done with your feature, now it is the PR, so the review cycle. Gracefully handle the feedback and then wait for deployment. As soon as it's live, you can share with the world, write a blog post about it. So that's basically the breakdown or the highlight of the entire presentation. So things like SWOT analysis, which can be helpful during the analysis phase, and in the tooling, how to set up. Probably go for IDEs because you can easily put debuggers. And task management, you can use tools like Trello, Google Sheets. There is a lot. There's Asana, there's Jira, there's a ton of project management tools out there. And yeah, that's it. Oh, I see there are more questions. So we have Eva asking, where do we find these project owners? So in all open source projects, there is always a list of contributors. It's part of the checklist on doing open source project. You have to add a contributors list, license contributor, and README. So that's where you find them. And then we have Dorothy. What happens when the maintainer gives you a go ahead to contribute to the issue? Do you wait or you go ahead? So you have already answered yourself. So you have already been given a go ahead. So which basically is, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. But if you feel you are very comfortable with proceeding, then please go ahead. But it's good to clarify these go-aheads so you can maybe try to understand what are the limits, what can you do at that particular moment, what do they need, understanding some of their needs. And Sandra, how do we find the projects? So Sandra, the projects, it will depend with your particular needs. So like my first point, which was analyzing, coming up with a plan. So what are your needs? What do you want to do? What do you want to upskill? Do you want to learn a new language? Do you think you have some skills and you have time that you want to offer? All that. So after you already done your analysis, you have done a breakdown of yourself, maybe through SWOT matrix, then it will be easy for you to know which projects. There's a lot of projects. Maybe I'll try to find some of these links on GitHub. But if you just Google open source projects, you'll find a lot of them. So there are people who take their time to try and curate these lists. So there's a lot of them out there. So if you just search by keywords open source projects, even on GitHub, there are people who curate them, just a list of open source projects. So after you know your needs and you know your strengths and weaknesses, you can pick based on languages or particular industries or fields. Dorothy says some maintainers are also so rude. How to handle that? So this is where there's always a code of conduct in open source projects, and it's taken very seriously by, at least the maintainers should know that. So it's taken very, very, very careful, very, very, very seriously, and there's always repercussion on some of this. So if it's violated, because it's made by the alliance of open source contributors, and by the virtue of you being an open source contributor, you have to abide to this code of conduct. Otherwise, you are kicked out. So in case of such issues, always be open to address some of the concerns that you have with these particular maintainers. You can first do one-on-one with them. Just give your feedback, tell them where you feel you're offended, and try to see if you can solve this particular conflict. If you cannot, I'm sure there will be a community that contributes to that particular project. You can maybe try to bring it up in the public forum with the people who are contributing with you. If that fails, it's not the only project, and I'm sure you can find another great project which can similarly fit you. So it's best for your sanity to just abandon the project and move on. I see Sandra is asking to understand a bit. Okay, so this I meant BDD, behavior driven development. So behavioral driven development, it's written in a language called Gherkin language. Let me share a link here. So this is a Wikipedia link that I'm going to share with you right now. So Gherkin language, which gives you an approach of defining tests or issues like storyboards. So you come from the user point of view, where you start as a user. Maybe you're defining a workflow feature. I mean a login feature. You can start the workflow by, as a user, when I put my email address, which should be in the format of first string, then @ symbol, then a particular domain, then dot, then another .com. Then I put a password, which should be maybe an mixed with alphanumeric or something. Then I click login, I should get this response. So that way, you know, these are particular key scenarios that you're supposed to implement. So the first thing will be when you're doing a feature can be, okay, I need to put email address support, and this email address need this particular validation. I need to add password strength or length need to be this way. And when I click login, I expect this response. So stuff like that. Any more questions? I see. You were asked what IDE would you recommend? I missed that one. So IDE will be dependent on the particular language that you are coding in. So if you are doing Python, for example, it will be PyCharm. I am a fan of the JetBrains because they spend a lot of time in researching and adding a lot of necessary efficiency tools in their IDEs. I think they have WebStorm, which you can use for most JavaScript stuff. Yeah, so you can find a lot of list of interesting IDEs. A lot of and which has community. They have even community support. You can install community. You don't have to buy most of them, so you can install community tools. So let me just post here. Eva is asking, how do we find these forums I speak of? So in every specific project, there will be a means of communication. They will probably have created a channel where you people can be able to communicate to maybe facilitate the project implementation. If they don't, it will be just through the particular GitHub comments. So there is the issues tab in GitHub, and let me see if I can find. So on the issues tab, you can go there. Probably there's a lot of discussion. You can talk about. You can raise issues, but most of them, they have specific channels of communication. Probably Discord accounts, Slack, which is the most common one that most of the people use. Project for beginners, Dorothy. There's the easiest way will just be for you to maybe Google just projects to contribute, but this will be very, very specific depending on your needs. What are your interests? Like it's very, very, very specific to a person. What language are you interested in contributing? What particular frameworks are you interested in? So I know that the channel is PyLadies, it's specific to Python, but the topic is open source contribution, and open source, it will be more about solving problems, not irrespective of language. So. Projects that I've worked on, they are actually quite numerous. How I select them, mine is very, very random. So it depends. Sometimes it might be, maybe I have a work sabbatical. Maybe I just want to find new excitement in coding. So I usually take like a work leave for a month or so, which I want to interact with something very different. So it can be established project, and it's a language of my interest, or it can be just local projects in the different communities across. I mostly contribute in community projects in Kenya, or particular hubs of innovation spaces. So they usually do these interesting things. Some are projects which were started as part of hackathons, but then they post. So that's how I pick mine. And sometimes it can be work related. It can be caused by work. So where I am doing maybe a task at work, and then I encounter a problem, and then I find a great tool or an extension or a package that I can use. But then I find a problem with that particular package, or I have a specific needs that I feel that package is not addressing, and I have a way of solving it. So I'll just do it, create my version, and then do a PR to the particular to the main project. So that is coincidental, but yeah, that's also how I do it. Once you've been given a go-ahead by the project mentor, what you do, it will be, next step is to understand the project. So I usually say ask a lot of questions. So for example, if you're given a go-ahead and you don't know what to do next, so the most important thing you can do is to ask them that, as much as you might think is a dumb question, but you can just ask them, what do I do now? Where from here? So you've given me a go-ahead. Okay, so what do you want me to do now? I think that way it helps you to also in managing expectations and also clarity. So you know what exactly is expected of you, and you're clear on what steps you should do. Eva, yes. So the YouTube will save it. Yeah, so it's tricky, yes. You can ask a lot of questions. So just feel free, engage them in many ways. Everyone, to be honest, everyone appreciates to be asked questions. So long as they say ask intelligent questions. So just try to not ask obvious questions that maybe you can see them there. For example, I can ask you, oh, what is the title of this live stream? But the title is there. So I might not answer. You might think maybe it's rude, but it's just right there. So I'm like, okay, your question, I don't know if it was a mock or it was a question. Yeah, so I might keep quiet. But yeah, if you ask questions, and people will be happy to of course share with you. So understanding what to do. So understanding what to do now, it comes back to part of the presentation where I said you need to understand the roadmap. So if, for example, because in open source, they usually create the, so with that expectation, so you can create an OKR, your own OKR. So you say, for example, it's a whole pressure system. And part of my contribution to this will be how do I dynamically, maybe I create an algorithm that can dynamically assign the time for this back pressure. So you focus more on this particular algorithm, so you also be to understand maybe things around the particular how to do this exponentials, how the numbers, how to be able to dynamically change the numbers, maybe expect, predict, and all that. How long do I have to wait for my PR to be accepted? It depends. Who are your reviewers and how busy are your reviewers? So most of the projects, some of them don't have full-time contributors, and that means it will take longer. But for those which has full-time contributors, that means there's someone who always watches for PRs. So if it takes longer than necessary, you can of course ask them. But it's always good to bug your reviewers. It even happens on our day-to-day jobs. When you have a PR, you have the viewers, but the turnaround time is 3 days, 4 days. So it's up to you to always mention them as your blockers. Maybe if you have stand-ups, you'll be like, hey, I wanted to move forward, but I cannot move forward without you reviewing this particular code. So you just talk to them directly. So you can ask, you can ping them. If you have a channel for talking, just reach out to them, be like, there's this PR, I don't know if you saw it, but I would like if you can review it. Nowadays, there's integrations, tools which notifies you on PRs once they're committed or created. So it helps them as reminders. So the time is a human factor. There's no specific time. It's very, very, very relative to the particular people that you're working with and their availability. Okay, any more questions? I will share the summary in the group, Dorothy. So I have just done a simple YouTube, Google. I've just shared a simple Google search for some of the open source projects to contribute. So I'm going to put some of these curations here on the chart. Like I said, it's very, very relative to your choices in language. So this is for first timers. They say first timer only. That's the name of the projects. The links. So you see on this particular chart, by default, it usually selects top charts. So top charts means the most recent charts. So once you click on that drop down of top chart, there's live chat. So it will show all the chat messages. You can see all the links. So they're in just these charts. That is the answer to Sandra and Eva. So I have found an interesting one which has for almost all the languages. And they have all the options. Yes, done. I've shared. Cool. So it seems there's no more questions. There's just a suggestion to share the resources that I've recommended. So I've shared all the links here on the chat. And about the summary, I'll also share it on the group. Yes, I'll do. Yes. So, okay. So I guess that will be it for today. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending my very, very, very short presentation on open source workflows. Yeah, and hopefully we all become lovers of open source and contribute soon. I guess that's it. Oh, Sandra, to see it, you have to click on the drop down in the charts, which say top charts, and then select live chats. It will show you all the messages that were sent on this particular live stream. So thank you, everyone, and bye-bye. I will end the stream now.